One day I bethought myself of applying to Signor Piatti, whose kindness to young players was notorious, for advice and guidance. When I first played something to him at his request, with all the fervent vibrato of youth, he laid a kindly hand on my shoulder and remarked gently, "My dear friend, we cannot always be in a passion."
Hello and welcome back to episode 2 of my podcast. You were introduced here by Octavie Dostaler-Lalonde. She read a quote from Harold Gost taken from Masters of the Cello. And she is one of the guests I spoke to. The other one is Artem Bellagorov. Both of them I met in Amsterdam when I was studying there. She plays the cello and he plays various keyboard instruments, mostly fortepiano, clavichord and harpsichord. The two of them have a project together called Romantic Lab, and you will find out what it's all about. The main idea is to imitate historical recordings. They will explain. That's the main subject of this podcast, but there will also be some talk about food and coffee. So here's Romantic Lab, Artem Bellagorov, Octavie Dostaler-Lalonde, and I hope you enjoy. Are we rolling? Am I okay? Yeah? Okay, it's July the 7th, 2021. Actually, yesterday I didn't say the year, I think. Anyway, it's 2021. I'm in Amsterdam, in the Jordan, I think it is.
Haarlemmerbuurt.
Haarlemmerbuurt.
To be precise, yeah.
Haarlemmerbuurt.
Close to
I'm in the very, I would say, typical Amsterdam apartment of Artem Bellagorov and Octavie Dostaler-Lalonde. We will have to talk about how these names would be pronounced correctly later on. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
There's also Lorenz again at the recording device. And we're going to hear some music very soon, but I thought before we do that, we need a coffee. And the two guys I'm with are specializing in, or not specializing, but
we're amateur.
Amateur, semi-professional coffee pour-overs.
Oh yeah.
Pour-overs. I don't know.
V60.
And I thought Octavie is going to make some coffee, and maybe Tuma, you can tell us what she's doing.
Okay.
So she's gonna start by grinding the beans, I hope.
Away from the mics a little bit.
What are the beans?
The beans are actually trying this for the first time. They're roasted in Amsterdam. It's called fried hats. They come from Java.
Indonesia.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's a very funny case, I have to say.
And yeah, they're in these plastic bottles.
It looks like a huge drug bottle, no? Like
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and you can go to this cafe and refill them.
That's very nice.
Yeah,
that's a very funky, has a very funky, colorful print on it. Anyway, it's made for filter coffee, it says. So, let's see. How's the grinding going? Very good?
Very good.
Very good.
It's long,
it's going to take some time, yeah.
It's going to take some... And I guess there's the specific water temperature.
Yeah, so it should be somewhere around 90 degrees. I guess for light roast should be higher temperature, around 94, something like that. For darker roast...
a little less.
A little less, yeah. Maybe down to 88 is, I guess, the lowest should be. But I broke all of our thermometers, so...
Really?
Yeah, I melted them and, like, boiling oil and, Chinese cooking experiments. So we're out of thermometers, so we're just kind of going by the feel.
But, 94 is pretty easy, You just put it on boiling and that's...
And then 30 seconds later, it's...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, now it's going to be a bit
depending on your altitude
than that for practical purposes.
Okay.
Because I brought the water sooner.
Okay. Cool.
So it's not going to be the most controlled environment by the book. Exactly.
Sounds good.
I think we're getting there.
And we're using a hand grinder.
Yeah, we're using a Hario. Can't remember the name of the model.
Yeah.
It's one of those Pro series.
And the beans have been measured.
Yeah, 20 grams of beans, and it's going to be 300 milliliters of water, and it's a pulsing method.
A pulsing method.
Yeah, so you pour water several times. It's
So you soak the beans, I guess, or the ground.
yeah. Well, first you do what do they call them? Wedding.
Wedding. Yeah.
Yeah, they call it wedding or bloom stage.
That's what I'm about to do.
Yeah, so you pour about. Well, actually, with a specific method, you get a bit more control. So if you want it to be sweeter, you pour less water in the beginning. So you could go like 35 grams of water.
Mm-hmm. Do you measure water in grams then?
Yeah, because you have.
That's what you also
have
do
it
with
on the-
baking bread.
Yeah.
It's funny,
Yeah. So I'm doing now the first pour is I'll try it for 35.
So it's between 35 and 50, I would say.
Yeah, I'll do 35. Yeah, it's very short. Actually, I didn't wet everything, so I'll have to do a longer one. Sorry. So it's 50.
But you have to get everything wet.
Yeah. It's always difficult.
Yeah, and then so with this method, then you get to 120, and then it depends on how strong you want it. So if you want it stronger, I think you do it in smaller batches. I can't remember, or it's the other way around.
But that part we never experimented with. No?
Yeah, we never
Usually
really did.
only it's the split in the beginning. We do different
And
proportions.
how's the Amsterdam water?
It's okay. We should filter. We should use filtered water.
Is it very hard?
Yeah, kind of. Not very, very hard. No? It's not the most.
Mm.
I think Brussels is much harder. I know.
Yeah,
from
no,
my
it's
sister.
not. It's not the worst, but
Mm.
ideally, of course, we should
Okay.
use filtered water. Yeah.
And you try a lot of different beans. You like trying out beans. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm.
Yeah, and then you have to find the right grind
Yeah.
size for different beans, and
Yeah.
also sometimes we use different filters. So right now we're using a cloth filter, which is nice because you can reuse it forever pretty much.
Mm. But you
And it's so it goes through much quicker than with a paper filter.
really.
Well, it depends on also what kind of paper filter
Yeah.
you use.
But yeah, I mean, for sure, a textile would have more space between the. Oh. You'll get more now. Look.
There it is. It smells good.
Smells very good.
It always smells better than it tastes, though. Like to get the taste to the level of the smell is
Yeah,
the
but I
ultimate
thought this
challenge.
morning the second one was very close to the smell even of the unground beans.
Yeah, okay.
The coffee.
Well, that's
yeah,
the-
I like
I
that.
think
That's the
I
best
think with
compliment
filter
one
it
can
happens
get.
sometimes.
Yeah.
I feel like espresso doesn't do
No,
that.
it's very
No, it's
different.
completely
It's very different
very
further.
different.
Yeah.
I have to say I'm a real espresso person,
Yeah.
so this is a bit new for me,
Hmm.
but it's nice. And there's this whole process,
Yeah.
like a ceremony almost.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's a little bit like a tea
Tea
in certain
ceremony.
countries.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we could have done some Chinese or Japanese tea. Jed always makes fun of us if he comes for tea or for coffee or something. Like, oh no, you're gonna bring your thermometers now and your scales.
Do you do anything normally?
Can you do something normal?
He's the one who's not doing anything normally.
Maybe he does coffee normally.
Maybe
I
he
don't know,
does,
maybe.
yeah. Maybe.
He drinks what was it, Irish breakfast tea.
I think so, yeah.
Okay. There's nothing wrong with that.
Well, I'm not one to judge.
To judge.
I'm just warming up the cups,
Warming
even though
up
I
the
know
cups.
I shouldn't. People like their filters a bit colder.
Oh
But
no.
I like mine
Oh,
to
no.
be
Yeah.
kind of stable, at least in the beginning. Then if you
Yeah.
want it colder, you can wait if you want. So what else are we gonna discuss today apart from coffee?
Let's stick with the coffee for a moment.
I mean,
It's almost done, right?
almost done.
Almost done.
Basically, it's done actually. No. So I'm just gonna.
I'm just afraid you're going
If
to
you're
pour
gonna
it over
if you're
in-
gonna edit
the
this, you're gonna misrepresent the amount of time it takes to make the coffee. It's gonna be like, oh, I was grinding and it's ready.
So now it's ready. I'm gonna split it in 3 parts because I think Lorenz, you don't want any.
Doesn't drink coffee. Yeah,
Ah, okay.
super weird. No, it's not weird.
I'll have just a little bit. Otherwise, I'm not gonna fall asleep until December.
Okay. So
Is there like with wine? Is there are there prescribed steps in tasting it?
well, actually a little bit because
Air, yeah, always
Yeah?
helps. But I can't stand doing this
a
stuff
little
with
bit
wine,
like
with anything.
what I
always-
said. People like to try it when it's not too warm. I mean, you can try it now, but often I'm told by barista friends of ours to wait a little bit after
Okay.
and let it cool down, and then you get. I mean, I find myself that it gets more towards sour when you wait,
No.
almost systematically. So
Mhm.
I don't always prefer that.
Yeah, and definitely I can smell more than coffee here. I think it's good, no?
Yeah.
Actually,
Yeah,
this turned
yeah.
out well.
Turned out to be quite okay.
This is the first time you have these beans, you said?
Well, we bought them for the first time. Yeah.
yeah,
we
I mean,
had
we're at the
them
bottom
there.
of the
Okay,
of the
okay.
bottle.
At
but
the cafe that sells them, and basically he made me a filter and then put ice in it. It was super warm that day.
Nice.
And it was the best coffee I've ever had. I think almost
on that
like-
day.
but it was almost by far the best. I think. No, you also agreed. It was really
Yeah, it's
nice.
true that if you make a filter and then you immediately cool it down with lots of ice, you actually taste more.
Yeah, I'm
strange
gonna
flow,
wait with this one and see what.
more of the subtleties.
But so those were the beans that they were using, which is why we bought them.
Yeah.
the trick is to cool it down without diluting it too much.
Mm.
And that I haven't. I tried it a couple of times. It was a bit on the diluted side. He did it really well. I don't know,
Yeah, I
it's-
mean, I don't know
But I have to
how-
say, for an espresso person, it really, to me at least, it really has something like tea. Very
Yeah,
strong
I
tea.
know. First time I
Yeah.
had Aeropress, I think it
Yeah.
was. I thought,
Yeah.
what is this watery thing?
Okay. But I'm not here to. I mean, this was not the reason to come here. So let's get into the real stuff. I think I'm going to play
wine. You mean?
wine. it'll be another 10 minutes till we get to the wine. I think there's something else here.
All right.
So we're going to listen to a recording of a piece by Robert Schumann, Träumerei, which is actually originally for piano. And
Right.
there is an arrangement for cello and piano by, do we know?
That's a really good question. Actually, I'm right in front of the Edison Matrix 3010, and it
Me
doesn't
too.
say.
Okay.
And now I can't.
But I think it's a
remember.
Grützmacher's
Is it not?
arrangement.
I think it took me a long time to get to the right edition for this one.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
No.
It does say actually on your website.
Ah,
Karl Davidov,
Oh, it's
yes.
Davidoff,
Okay, that's right.
1838.
Yeah, because there are many versions, but this was the one that I used, I think, because
And-
it was the closest.
And the recording is
piano.
from 1914 by Paolo Grupp.
Gruppe.
Gruppe.
I mean,
I don't
he's
know.
Was he
he's
French?
Dutch.
He's Dutch. Okay.
Yeah.
Gruppe.
Gruppe.
Yeah.
Gruppe. Okay, let's stay with that for a moment. And I would say I'll just play it and then we keep going. Okay. So you guys have listened to this a lot, right? Because you also made a recording of this based of the same piece based on this recording.
Exactly, yeah. So we did an imitation.
You did an imitation.
Yeah, of this recording as closely as we could get to it. Yeah, so we did listen to it a lot.
You did listen to it a lot.
This was actually one of the most difficult of the 7 we did. For me at least.
To listen to, because of the sound quality, or
I guess to hear the details, but that actually there's a software that can help with that, which actually we didn't use, but we could have. But no, it's more about replicating the timings that was really difficult.
It's very difficult, no? It's very sort of
out of time.
Yeah.
All the long notes are just a long note.
A long note.
And they're different lengths, but I mean they're written on.
Yeah, to find a common pulse is a major challenge.
There isn't one. There is just simply really like.
There isn't one.
I mean, it's always free in that period more than today, but this one was particularly challenging.
In a way, that's actually kind of one of the general takeaways from not just from this project of imitating recordings, but in general from listening to early recordings, that pulse is something that very much depends on the context.
Mm-hmm.
Just like how we actually experience time in real life.
Mm.
You know, if something amazing happens, something out of the ordinary, time slows down for you. You know, if you just suddenly were falling off the window, it would feel like it's taking longer, this fall.
Because we take in so many things all of a sudden.
Yeah. Basically, that's how our brain functions.
But at the same time, when we experience something very engaging, and we look at the watch after, it's it goes time by. Goes much faster.
Yeah.
Yes, both things it exists, but I mean I'm not trying to say that this is exactly the same thing. Obviously,
there can even be like a whole period of time when both slowing down and speeding up happen. For example, if you have a very dense period of time with a lot of emotions or changes and things like that, and it feels like everything's sped up, the time goes by very quickly because you're never bored. But then at the end of several months, you feel like it's been a whole year because so much happens.
Yeah.
But actually, while listening and playing, also that's an interesting comparison between the two, because when you're doing the imitation, you're going from one to the other. So from one being on the listening end of things, you listen to the recording and you have an impression. And then very quickly you switch to being the player and trying to replicate what you heard. And very often, actually, we had this observation. That was one of the first things we noticed, which was that our sense of time while listening was really different from while playing, for example. And that sometimes with recordings that we were listening to, we had an impression of things being quite free and flexible, but sometimes the extent to which they were free and flexible was diminished by how much it made sense or how kind of smooth things were happening, and maybe how we were also distracted by other expressive tools that were used, like portamento or rhythmical things that were happening. And when we had to actually do it ourselves and play along with the recording almost systematically, we suddenly realized we were doing much less than they were based on what our impressions were as a listener. Like, okay, they speed up a little bit, they slow down a little bit.
This
and
is
then
what you like took a note of when you listen to it?
When you listen, you think, okay, here is a little faster, a little slower. Yeah. This note is a little longer. And then you play it together. Oh, wait a second, it's actually, well, to our standards, a lot. Yeah, but somehow, as a listener, you sometimes just get so convinced and taken by the...
Yeah, you tend to kind of get used to it and normalize things.
Yeah, or it makes sense to you. So you think, okay, well, how much tempo modification can there be? Like, you know, nowadays we wouldn't do any, so it must be just a little bit, since it sounds so reasonable somehow. But somehow, the way it compares to our ingrown habits as modern players is still comparatively much more.
Can you go back a step and tell us, like, how you decided to do this piece and this recording, and what your steps are then from deciding this and to your own recording, the steps in between?
Okay, you want to?
Well, maybe you should talk about the choice.
Of the piece. This one I chose. Yeah, I was mostly choosing the pieces.
So this is video 6 or recording 6 out of 7 that you made.
So we recorded 6 and 7 on the same day, And I was also choosing this. Those two last ones I did the choosing at the same time. I was actually in Cologne while you were rehearsing with Concerto Köln, and I was doing all the search and listening to a lot of recordings. Basically, to qualify, the recording had to first of all have some feature that was striking and interesting to learn, because basically this whole project was a tool, like basically a study for us as players to gain something that we don't already think we can do. So first thing is find a recording that would be teaching us something different, maybe from the other ones we did before. So in that case, it was definitely, I was drawn to this one based on the sense of rhythm and time that are so out of this world in a way. This dream, basically, Träumerei, that's very present there, this kind of out of time feeling. And all the rhythms, he's playing always, reverse dotted rhythm, like short, long, when it's actually written all equal eighth notes.
Almost
and you often hear the opposite. You hear lengthening of the first, like inégal in French Baroque music. You hear that a lot on early recordings. Long, short, long, short, long. And this was so basically quirky and angular in some ways with the rhythm and the short, long, and then maybe sometimes equal, maybe sometimes going back to just normal dotted rhythms, long, short. But yeah, I thought this was definitely not something I would have ever chosen to do in this piece, based on my own imagination, let's say. So that was for that reason, I think, mostly the time and the rhythm. And it's also another important aspect was that this piece, Träumerei, is one of the most recorded pieces in that era. And
in this version?
For cello and piano, there are also for violin and piano. There are a lot for piano, simply.
Can imagine.
Around that time. Because they were recording shorter pieces. This is on a cylinder. So, you can only fit so much music on a cylinder roll. But so Träumerei is one of the, most important pieces for people to record around that time. And so you have so many different versions of it. So I thought that's also interesting, because ultimately I thought we might do other versions and compare those together, or at least in analysis we could compare, and as part of writing a blog, which is still supposed to happen, we would like to investigate different versions and see how they differ.
I think that would be fantastic.
So that was why. And this also is a Dutch player. I ended up with a lot of Dutch cellists, actually, for some reason.
It's interesting also, Jed had a lot of Dutch sources yesterday. It's pretty new to me, I have to say. But it's interesting.
It's very strange, actually. It's not the same with pianists, for example. There aren't so many. There are a few interesting ones, but many more German, for example.
A lot of Dutch cellists ended up in all parts of the world.
That's
actually.
true. Yeah,
in England, in Germany, in France, in Russia.
Yeah. Okay. One of our favorites, Josef Hollmann.
He went to all the places.
He went to all of these places pretty much. Yeah, he even played
in the Meiningen.
Hans van Billo, the Meiningen Orchestra.
Yeah, he studied in Belgium, then in Russia, and then in France at Paris Conservatory. So
so we did an imitation of his Nocturne.
Yeah,
the Chopin Nocturne arranged for cello and piano, which was also very fun to do.
I think one last thing I didn't say is also the time of the recording. This is a recording from 1914, and basically I always aim to get earliest possible recordings with good enough quality to be able to listen to it, but trying to represent the oldest generation of people who recorded rather than a younger one, because
as
styles
close to the composer as possible.
It's not even that much. I mean, I would say the composer is important to some extent, but in this particular project, we're interested in performers, actually. We're really interested in how people did play this music in a time that's far away from us, as far away from us as possible. People who were trained in the 19th century. Yeah, so and also because it's a time of change right after, First World War, Second World War. Styles were changing a lot. So trying to get people who were recording kind of at a later age, already before the styles were changing. So trying to catch a glimpse of how things were before the wars.
Okay. So you've decided on what piece and what recording?
Yeah, one
And
at a
then-
time. It was a slow process. We did this over 2 years, I think, a year and a half or so.
Something like that. Yeah.
And then
So-
what happens next?
What happens next when we imitate? You know,
well,
once
when you've
we've
chosen the-
You wanna tell someone?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's a lot of listening. And then, yeah, I guess you start with, there's all this terminology that's used in the field: distant listening, close listening. So you
Okay.
get, with distant listening, you get kind of a general idea of what it sounds like. Maybe make some observations, things that strike you as unusual or, not what you heard before.
Or like
kinds
how
of-
expressive it is.
how
or-
expressive it is, but
Mm.
also some technical observations. How much noise there is. Is this the right speed? Are we? You do
Oh,
all
yeah.
the sort of background information. There's always a lot of
So-
technical kind of information that you need to know, whether the transfer was done right and that
I
kind of
see, I
thing.
see,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah.
what pitch is this? Is this realistic? Can we trust the source? Where does this come
Should we
from?
listen to this at a faster or slower speed?
Exactly.
Okay,
Yeah.
I see. Mm-hmm.
These kinds of things. Then with close listening, you get into, really listening maybe to small sections and then doing annotations. But that definitely helps. Yeah, so a heavily marked score, especially on Octavie's part. Yeah, because it's difficult. Pianos didn't record so well
Yeah.
with acoustic recordings like this one. So it's difficult to hear. It's actually a major challenge to hear what's going on with
What's
the
going
piano
on.
part.
Mhm.
Yeah.
In this one particularly, I remember sometimes you weren't sure what the notes were even. It was he playing this note or not that you saw on the score.
Yeah, because very
Also
often
it's
they
an
don't play
arrangement.
what's
written.
there. Of
Mm.
course, especially with accompaniments, sometimes they add things, sometimes they change things. Yeah, but still, I guess mostly from the point of view of a pianist, in this, what I was interested in is how the ensemble works.
Mm.
Because, yeah, of course, you can't really tell anything about pedaling or the touch, all these
Yeah.
finer things.
Yeah.
So you have to forget about them
Yeah.
for a moment. But you can tell whether
They're playing together.
they're playing together. And
Yeah.
if they're not playing together, what is happening? Are they playing before or after? Most of the time,
Yeah.
or when...
Who's controlling the tempo
Who's
changes,
controlling the
for
tempo
example?
changes? Yeah,
That's-
for example, you get to a new section and a new section starts in a slightly different tempo. And if it's the pianist who sets the tempo simply because he has the
He's
next
starting,
notes
yeah.
coming while the cellist has a long note.
Yeah, or even at the micro level, like you just said, like a long note in the cello part, then the piano is controlling the rhythm for the length of that note.
Yeah,
And
that's
this
what
is
I was
actually,
saying, yeah.
Mm.
yeah, that is interesting.
Yeah, so these kinds of things were, I guess, the most interesting to me.
Then
Mm.
rolling of the chords.
Yeah, then perhaps when you get to piano solo recordings, perhaps either over later time when you can actually hear more details,
Mm.
or if you look at piano rolls, which are also very informative, then you can go into more detail with delicacies
But I think even
of piano
with the
playing.
ones we did, you had to mark down some
Absolutely, yeah.
arpeggiation and things
Yeah,
like
of
that,
course,
no?
whatever I could hear. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
But of course, it's always a question of, what are you looking for? What are you
trying to
listening
learn?
for?
What-
What are
Yeah.
you trying to?
I guess there are a few
to
things
hear
that you
it,
cannot really listen for, like the finer details of the piano color. But I
Yeah.
guess also with the cello, no? Because
Mm.
when you record this sort of music, you have to play pretty strongly
Yeah.
to make it even register.
I think basically I was focusing on so many other aspects. I mean, there's so much to think about and to write down
yeah.
in the score. Like, I mean, I had a lot of rhythmical things written down, like a dotted rhythm instead of this note is a little longer, a little shorter, and all these ensemble markings, like am I before the piano, am I after the piano? Sliding here, this fingering, that fingering, vibrato, more heavy vibrato on this note.
The sliding is, I have to
some-
say, it's very striking, no?
Yeah. Of course, it's like, it's one of the main features. It's like a slur, like a normal aspect of speech or something. It's like there all the time.
Yeah.
You can say it's an expressive device, but I think at some point it also becomes just like a mannerism in a way. I mean, it's just the way you the way you play intervals in at some point. It's a little bit like vibrato today. You have to color your vibrato and change it. Like, I mean, for modern players, I'm not talking about historical performance practice, but
and when you say mannerism, you don't mean it necessarily in a negative way.
not in a negative way, just meaning
it's what you do.
is it like you have to have a particular meaning for each of your slides? I mean, I'm sure they carry some meaning, but also to some extent.
But if you do slides so often, it loses its.
It's not like a special effect or something.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. But what was I going to say?
Also striking, I find the vibrato.
Well, for cellists, in almost all of the early recordings that I know of, there's almost constant vibrato. In some exceptions, not. Like Heinrich Grünfeld, I think I can hear he doesn't always use vibrato. But in many other ones, they're, first of all, a little bit of a later generation than maybe Joachim himself, for example, who famously did not want vibrato to be everywhere.
Everywhere, yeah.
But the cellists who recorded are often younger, and I mean, according to my experience, they vibrate almost on each note. So, yeah. But so basically, when I was analyzing and trying to replicate these recordings, I had so much on my mind that I think, tone. I had a lot of impressions about dynamics and the little swellings, or like how the articulation is behaving, and that also influences the rhythm a lot. So an impression that I had, for example, was that there's a general intensity in the sound that's different maybe from how we play in a historical informed manner when we play earlier repertoire. Often we do a lot of swelling or very subtle colors of tone with like a lot of air in the sound. And I feel like, I heard less of that and more of an intense, deep and dense sound, which I feel like influences a lot how you can then control the subtleties of rhythm. So you have like a basically, monochrome sound quality in a way, and then a lot of shades of rhythmicality, rhythmical differences, and
This simply, there is more relief to the rhythm when you have a more constant pressure, more constant tone, density of the tone. Yeah. Whereas if you kind of go in and out all the time,
then you don't actually hear the rhythm in such a precise way, and
it's a little fluffy. Everything becomes a little less defined.
Yeah. So for me, it was like just a general thing to just keep the sound more consistent in a way, and then play with other aspects much more.
Yeah. It's funny, because when I've listened to this, and I haven't listened to historical recordings a lot. I mean, the first thing I hear is the noise of the recording machine, and then pretty thin sound, I would say.
Yeah, okay.
But I guess you get used to this whole world of sound and hear many more differences.
That's true. Yeah. At some point you don't
listen to a lot of historical recordings.
You hear less of the noise, and then you also
get more into it.
Pretend that you hear more of the sound. I mean, it's true, because there's all the lower harmonic range. They actually don't appear.
Doesn't register.
They don't.
Yeah, the low notes on the piano are not registered there. So the only thing you actually hear is the overtones. But you still, when you listen, you still hear the lower notes.
You have the illusion.
Your brain basically
fills in.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah,
how that works. Sometimes you get some phantom effects that are not there, and you just then you can check with software, is it really there, or am I hearing things? And sometimes you hear things.
You're getting crazy.
So
you did distant listening,
close listening,
annotations, and then you also played along.
Yeah, exactly. Then actually we did separately annotating our scores. Then we would come together and rehearse, and I think first we would try and play through the music with our separate annotations and see how they compare. Like, oh, did you actually think I was supposed to play before you or after you, and things like that? Do you think we have to speed up much more? So we would compare our impressions, and then immediately after listen again.
It's a lot of listening, playing, then also playing along with the recordings, with open cam.
One thing you can do, and I've only done more recently actually with a quartet. I did an imitation recently with a quartet, and we also did an imitation with a trio. Yeah. But with a quartet, we did a click track based. Oh, that's food.
Things are food.
Yeah.
That's our section. Food. Yeah.
You can go, and I finish them.
Get it, and you.
Yeah. So with the quartet, we only imitated a short section of a piece, And with a software called the Sonic Visualizer, you can look at where the onset of each note is, and you can actually add clicks or like the beats, a marker for each beat. So for the beginning of each beat, you put a marker manually, entering it, and so at the end we can listen to only the click track of it. So it's all the beats with their actual
rhythm,
with their actual duration according to this recording.
Wow.
So every beat is of a different length, obviously. And then as a quartet, so we played obviously in this time, yes, they would be.
For you, it's obvious by now.
By now, it's obvious, yes.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, we get a big bag of food. We'll come to that in a minute.
Yeah, we can just put it aside.
I'm just gonna put it in front of myself.
Thank you. Where it should be.
Yes, that's where it belongs.
Yeah, so obviously for us, but yeah, maybe we can still clarify this, that in earlier times, like in the Romantic era, they were not playing with a steady pulse as default, rather the opposite, that the tempo fluctuation was just a normal thing to do, to be expressive with music. So pushing and pulling, and also micro differences within a bar. You can have a lot of variations of durations of each individual rhythms and notes, and then that affects the overall pulse. And then you have for longer stretches of music also. So at the micro level, you have a lot of differences, and at a macro level, you have faster sections, slower sections, things like that. Speeding up over many bars, slowing down over many bars. But yeah, at the micro level, you still have that. So if you put a click track on each of the beats, they're going to be all different durations. And so we were playing together with the click track that we made with a...
That's a string quartet.
That was with a string quartet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because basically the Romantic Lab we did several years ago already, and by now we also acquired new...
You move on.
Yeah, we developed our knowledge of the current technologies. And yeah, there are tools like this that you can use. And so it was really interesting with the quartet to do, like, trying to play with the click track, then putting the recording back on to the click track and listening to both together, then again trying with the click track, then without the click track, and yeah, you can basically measure how close you are.
Wow.
Yeah, you can.
I think it's very useful.
Get caught up in the technicalities.
I
also.
guess so.
Yeah,
And
but the more players involved, I think the more
You
necessary
need that.
maybe.
Yeah.
To
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah.
Okay, so playing
together,
comparing your notes, then listening again in the rehearsal, and then I guess that's it.
Then playing along with the recording, but like super softly to just really hear it, and sometimes with headphones, and playing along to
so that's mostly about the rhythm, I guess.
Yeah, it's mostly about rhythm, some slides,
things,
rhythmical things,
alignment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and
ensemble
and then
playing. I mean, on the alignment, like of our two voices.
Yeah, well, between the hands, and also between the two of us.
Mm.
And then on the day of the recording, we just record. I think they're all complete takes. We didn't.
Yeah,
do any
so we did like
editing.
up to 7 takes of each time, and then we picked the one that we felt we managed the most.
Do you judge your performance then by how close you get to the original recording? I mean, after a take, you say, I think that was good because it was close to what you...
Yeah, sometimes we would go back and listen and see, because, every time you start, every day is different. You feel a little different, and you have memory of what it was. It's a little
that's
different.
true. We would listen to the recording again, I think,
So we would listen again, and...
But that's a good question. I mean, is it about how good it sounded to us that day? Is that what you're asking? Like,
it's a combination of factors. It's basically somewhere in the middle between the overall what we think is the closest to the original, plus the one that we just like best.
Yes.
Like sounds good.
Yeah.
Because this is not per se an artistic statement. This is a research product.
Yeah.
It's a research product, and it's a research about ourselves as much as it is about the
we're
recordings.
basically guinea pigs, and we're sharing our experience with the world a little bit. I mean, of course, we didn't have to make this public, but we chose to do that. I guess the idea was to communicate the open doors to more possibilities. If there are people of today who manage to sound like this. Whoa, well, that's not the reason. No, but it's for sure an aspect was a bit like spreading the word or like interesting others in this and seeing how it sounds in the hands of people of today, without the scratchiness also in the room and with modern microphones but also it's an interesting thing, just embodiment or reenactment. It's also about owning the material yourself, and once it's your thing, even though you're imitating, it has to make some kind of sense for it to at any level sound similar.
Let's hear what it sounds like in modern hands. Wow. It's something I observed in all the recordings, that all the endings are pretty dry, no?
Yeah, the end abruptly. There's often that, actually.
Yeah.
Even within the recordings, like in between phrases, sometimes like super short endings. Notes like you hear the punctuation, like, period.
So I listened to this, and then I listened to the original. And now that we've talked about it, I actually find it more outrageous than before. It's funny because I don't have very strong, Jed would say doxa, like ingrained
Right.
expectations on this kind of music.
Yeah.
I don't know this music very well.
Yeah.
And, so when I first listened to your recording, I mean the sliding stood out very much and the vibrato. But that's also something that I know a little bit about, just like on the surface.
Yeah.
But now with the historical recording and the things you point out, it's really pretty wild. I have
Like,
to
what's
say.
wrong with the pianist? Can't he just play together with her?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Come on,
I
dude.
really can hear
You're
it
a
in
very,
my...
very bad accompanist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's not by... I mean, I don't think it's by mistake. If it's
Of
so
course not.
systematic...
No.
No,
It's
yeah,
really
and it's
fun.
that's one of the first things that's actually quite consistent on all the recordings that we looked at. That the pianist is late most of the time.
Mm.
Sometimes
on
early.
important places, like beginning of phrases.
Yeah, in this piece it's almost all the time,
Mm.
which is surprising because when you think about rubato or what even pianists do themselves when their hands are not together, it's usually the other way around.
Or
Left
like
hand comes
most
first.
often. It
and
happens.
Soprano
but-
is late.
Mm.
Very rarely they do the opposite, but as a rule, that's how you do it. When they're company, though, whether it's a violinist or cellist or singer, doesn't matter, they're always late.
Mm. Interesting.
I mean,
And-
of course, I'm sure some devil's advocate could say, well, you know how they were recording, they couldn't see each other,
Yeah,
they were
but
turning their backs to
As
each other.
any experienced chamber musician will know, you don't need to see each other.
Yeah.
We have no problem being together,
Mhm.
and with this Corona times, I think we all
Got used to...
know that we can even be 30 meters apart and be together just
Yeah,
fine. A
yeah.
little bit of getting used to the space.
Yeah.
And the fact, they were
That's
very
true.
close. There was first of all they were sitting actually or standing very close to each other.
Mm.
So that's not a. I don't buy that argument.
I guess
don't
you
think.
also looked at the score that you used a lot. But do you remember what the first note is? What the value is?
It's a quarter note, I think.
It's a quarter note,
Yeah.
yeah. Because while we were talking, I was opening the score.
Mm.
And now that we listen to it, I thought it was like, it's crazy how long the
Must
first
be.
note is.
Yeah.
Was
Yeah,
at
and
least be
they're
half a
always
note.
of a different length every time.
Yeah.
and-
Yeah.
I can hear it in my sound though how awkward I felt, I think. Like about the ensemble, specifically the ensemble playing.
Mm.
I mean it's really funny how we're trained so much to feel it as a mistake if it's not together. So I can hear myself cringe every time, like da-dum, between my onset and the piano. But also I'm kind of calculating because I know we have to do it. We're trying to do it. So I'm like, I'm waiting for it. Then okay, here it comes. But still, it feels really like I'm doing a
I
mistake.
I haven't listened to this one for a long time.
Me
And-
too.
And now it almost doesn't sound like it's. I don't remember how it felt when I did it.
remember.
But it doesn't sound unnatural to me.
No?
Yeah.
To me
no,
it does.
it sounds very organic.
Okay.
It's funny.
Even though all the togetherness,
Yeah.
it doesn't sound like a mistake to me.
I could just remember myself like thinking
You just have better
so hard
memory.
and yeah.
We've established that fact.
But also just feeling the tension of I just played before the piano now, even when that's the instruction I have for myself, but I still feel it as a mistake physically and psychologically.
It's funny. In a very different context of different music, I'm trying to do that with people,
Mhm.
and it's very hard to find people who accept that and play along.
Yeah.
I'm trying to do this sort of ensemble playing for a while now, but I can't because I don't find people who want to do it. It's crazy
Yeah.
because I like it. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't feel like a mistake to me.
Mhm.
Actually,
Even when
quite
you
the
do it
opposite.
yourself.
Quite the
Not-
opposite.
yeah.
When I rehearse and we're not together and we're trying to get it together, it really bothers me now. Yeah.
I can totally imagine this
Yeah.
shift of mindset.
Yeah.
It's funny that it can happen. We're all guinea pigs when we do early music because we come from some training, then we go towards a different training some point in our lives, and we see how it's kind
Apart
of.
from all these French kids who start on the harpsichord. And
Yeah.
There are some people who start
Yeah.
as early musicians nowadays, but it's
But they also
not
start
done
with
for a
their
long
own
time.
doxa.
Of course.
Yeah.
There is
I mean,
nowadays
we all
dogs,
do, and
yeah.
we always did. That's
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
that's one thing we'll.
But the
never
funny
be able
experiment to
remove.
do is like trying to change our own taste almost on purpose, or like getting suddenly submerged into totally different aesthetics and see how you come out.
We're getting into more general things here. Maybe we should.
Speaking about about taste.
Yeah,
Shall we
maybe-
taste some of our?
Yeah, let's talk about very non-general, very specific food and wine, and then we can come back to the more
Okay.
general things. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Cool.
sounds good.
Prost.
Prost.
So I'm just gonna quickly say what we're drinking.
Mm.
So this is a rosé from the Pfalz. What's Pfalz in English? Palatine? Do you say Palatine? Do you just say Pfalz? Whatever.
I really don't know.
It's a rosé from 2020, which I think is made completely of Pinot Noir. It doesn't say on the label, but it should be. And it's from the how do you say
Winery.
Winery.
from the
Vineyard.
winery Säckinger. Two brothers and one of their wives run the company, and it's from their line Pure, which is a natural wine line. And I don't think it says that it contains sulfites, but I don't think there are any added sulfites. So yeah,
Only naturally occurring sulfites.
yes, exactly.
They are.
It's not completely clear. I know
Very,
this.
very beautiful color. I
Yeah,
love
very
this
beautiful
so
color.
much.
Yeah,
It's not pink.
I've had this wine before, and yeah, I like it. And Tioma's already digging in.
Sorry.
What are we eating?
It's so good. I love the wine.
What are we eating, Octavie?
Okay, so I can tell
This
you.
is all food from a Sichuan restaurant.
Called Sichuan. Yeah, and there are several locations, huh? But the one we go to is Warmoestraat. On
So
Warmoestraat.
it's like a chain or like
No.
a franchise or
No, it's not. But I think they have more than one location. That's the.
okay.
It's a bit mysterious, actually. Even my chiropractor, who's
Even my chiropractor doesn't know.
But she's from a Chinese heritage, and she was telling me that she was also like, is there more than one location? Is it all the same owners? I was like, I think so. They have the same font for their. Yeah, you like it? So basically, yeah, we don't know. So what we're eating, actually, what Lorenz is eating, is Palace chili green beans and Palace eggplant in Yuxiang, I think. I don't know how you say this. And then we have Chengdu Kung Pao tofu. We have spicy and sweet thick noodles, which is what Tioma is eating.
They're great.
And Sichuan
too.
spicy jelly noodles. This is basically mung bean jelly.
Mm-hmm.
Squares that are
Sliced.
in
Yeah.
in rectangles, and this is my favorite dish of the Sichuan restaurant so far. But I
And it's
have
cold,
yet
so
to discover other ones.
we can get to it at the end because it's
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's a
that's
cold dish, so
true.
nothing's gonna happen to it.
I haven't tried the beans, so I'm very curious about them.
So I've never had specific Sichuan food, I think. And also when you go to Chinese restaurants in Germany, especially Eastern Germany,
It's
I
mostly
don't-
Cantonese, no? That's the
yeah, and
same
I don't
as-
think that it has much to do with Chinese food.
Really?
Yeah.
So actually,
I know that in America, apparently, mostly when you hear Chinese
this
food,
is
Cantonese.
this is it's green, but it's a Sichuan pepper, right?
This?
It-
Wait,
What I'm showing you, or is it not?
it's a
Let me try.
I think so.
So I
Yeah.
I imagined very oily,
No, it's
very
it's not.
oily and deep fried, and it's exactly that.
It's not deep fried though, but
Oh,
a
it
lot
looks
of it
very
is
oily.
cooked in oil,
Mm.
or you start with oil and you have the aromatics in the oil. Yeah.
They probably put chili oil in here, right?
Mm.
Chili flakes.
I think a lot of well, you see the chili peppers.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Very nice.
I'm glad you're liking.
But I'm wondering, do we have more napkins?
I also wish we had more, but because we're using them as soupla.
That's true. Yeah, these are meant to be napkins, but just toilet paper.
Yeah.
Drag your mouth.
Okay, I will get
over the table.
It's actually a really nice combination.
Yeah, it does work.
With natural wine, it works much better
Yeah.
because with all this mineral taste, it's almost like a palate cleanser.
Sorry, it's not super presentable, but here's
It's
what
okay.
we have.
It's okay.
Thankfully, it's just a podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't see.
Actually, let's take a picture of the food.
Ah. Okay, well, I'll remove this one. Tell me when you're ready.
Can I be eating in the picture?
You won't be in the picture.
Oh, damn.
I totally want some of these thick noodles, by the way. So don't finish it all before I tried it.
They have gluten.
Does it look fine?
Yes.
Okay.
Great.
I put it this
Thanks.
back. Thank you. The wine is really delicious.
Mm-hmm.
Did you try this, Tom?
Mm-mm.
Oh, it's really good.
The tofu.
I haven't tried it, but this one. Mm.
The tofu is super nice.
Mm. I'm glad to hear. It's all vegetarian, by the way.
I was wondering when you do these imitations
Mm-hmm.
and then you hear these pieces or maybe similar repertoire played by people without any historic perspective.
Mm.
Has it changed your reaction to it?
I mean, not specifically after imitations, I wouldn't say. It's something, that's already happened
Before.
a while ago.
Mhm.
Yeah.
No, for me, it did change something.
For you, did?
I know what it is, actually.
Well, I was just speaking for
Okay.
myself.
Go ahead, finish.
I'm done.
No, because I think what I started noticing is, in a way, yeah. So basically, how the early music approach, like the today's hip approach to
Mm.
earlier repertoires,
And
how
by
they
hip-
are
by hip-
intrinsically modernist.
Hip is historically informed
Mm.
performance practice. Just
Yeah.
to be.
So basically, when we today play
HIP.
Baroque music or classical music in a historically informed manner,
Mm.
we still take on a lot of the post-World War aesthetics of
Mm.
cleanliness and playing together and things being in tune, beautiful sound, and all these kinds of things.
Mhm.
Rhythmically, maybe more free in a way with earlier repertoires, especially. But yeah, there's still everything's kind of moderate to some extent, I find,
Mhm.
compared to those recordings, anyways. So it's like just acknowledging that we moved away from the Romantic era and we got into modernism, and then the early music movement started within that
Mm.
mindset.
Mm.
And so I hear a Baroque ensemble play, and I hear it like very together, very controlled, very kind of clean, and I didn't
When they
notice
play-
that before.
When they okay, so you're talking about historically informed
Performance
performers.
of earlier repertoire.
Yeah. Okay.
He was asking about this
Yeah.
repertoire.
Ah, yeah,
this,
that's
but
true,
this
you
is
said that.
also interesting.
Mhm.
This is also interesting.
That's
yeah.
true. I forgot you specifically.
He
said.
was leaving the subject for dessert.
No, that's true.
No,
No,
but
but-
yeah.
About today's repertoire, I mean, I think that clash of ideas between like modern. Is it good? Oh, okay, I'm looking
Very
for it
nice,
better.
Mm.
I think this shock already happened when I started doing early music.
Mm.
Hearing modern players playing romantic music and feeling like yeah.
Yeah, but does it
No,
leave
exactly. for
does it
this-
leave you unsatisfied when you hear, like, let's say Träumerei without the portamento
Hmm.
rhythmically close to what's notated?
I guess mostly it's the rhythmical aspects I miss the most.
Mm.
The tempo.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it's a mindset.
Mm.
We were in Paris. We went to a concert where it was actually an interesting kind of experimental concert where, well, the original idea was to have the same pieces played by a modern group,
Mhm.
it was Archduke Trio.
Felix,
And-
you had this?
Not yet. Wait, that I had, yeah.
You did?
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, and I did too. So
Okay,
go
so-
for it.
Mm.
But it,
It's amazing.
Okay, thanks.
it's not like you made it. Oh, thank you so much.
No, thanks for offering me to finish the dish is what I meant, not for the compliments. Okay, sorry. So yes, there were.
Timing is everything, isn't it? So this concert in Paris, Archduke Trio performed by modern players, and then the second half by an ensemble, an HIP ensemble on historical instruments, specifically people who are doing the same kind of thing that we're doing, interested in early recordings,
Mm.
studying them closely, doing some imitations. In any case, that didn't happen exactly for
Mm.
technical reasons, so the repertoire was actually different. Beethoven, but it was a piano sonata instead of a archduke. Yeah. But yeah, so I enjoyed both, I have to say. Of course, it's easy to criticize. Oh, you just go through the checklist. You're doing this, no, you're not doing this. You're not playing the right instrument. You're not doing tempo modifications in this particular way. That's kind of a stupid way of attending a concert to be sitting there and going through a checklist like that. So I just turned you just turned it off and you listen to it in its own rights. And then having that knowledge, sometimes you also, specifically in this concert, the modern pianist was doing a lot of things that you thought modern pianists don't do. He was playing hands not together, rolling chords,
surprised sometimes, right?
using pedal, for a long time, which doesn't really work on the modern piano, but would be historical, and things like that. So, and that doesn't come from early recordings. That's just
his taste.
It's just his taste, and it's things things always develop. And modern pianists now do a lot more of these things that they did in the 50s. Without necessarily being inspired by early recordings. Just like you have to do something different. You end up, going the same. It's not like there are many. You either play together or not together. To some degree, it's kind of black and white. How exactly you do it, of course, is a different story.
It's interesting because also I think for Jet, going back to historical perspectives is a way of renewing your own performance, no?
Yeah.
And I think that's also what happened with you, no? It's not about making the same music in the end. It's about getting a new perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, I think, anything else is just as valid. You can be playing, Bach on a Kurzweil electronic keyboard or something. Which I know a guy who does this kind of thing. Anthony Romanuk, his Australian keyboard player who's based in Belgium. He just had a CD come out on Alpha called Bells, and he's playing on harpsichord, on modern piano, on fortepiano, and I think it's a Rhodes. I think it's a Rhodes. Yeah, and he's playing. Yeah, he's basically playing whatever music has something to do with bells. Some of it is his improvisation, some of it is Bach, some of it is John Bull, I think.
Bird.
It's or Bird.
There's something there.
Yeah, exactly, Bird. You're right. It's kind of all over the place, and he's playing in different styles, and it's great. I mean, it's all valid. It's just one of the many ways of approaching music or interpretation in general. In a way, maybe even less original. Not coming up with anything new. I'm just trying to dig out something, old. But it's kind of, in my mind at least, it's a neat and tidy way of doing it. Oh, these are people who come from the time of when the music was written. They must, music is an oral tradition. Musical notation is terrible. Doesn't tell you anything about how music's played. Yeah, so it makes sense. It's an ideal little tidy package. Makes my OCD mind happy.
It also becomes sort of a sport, no? To be able to figure out what happened. It's almost
it's a bit of archaeology.
Yeah, archaeology,
Yeah.
And you said that some of the things that you hear on these early recordings are contradictory to what you read in methods or treatises.
Yeah, even by the people who wrote this.
The same people.
The same people, yeah. The person who wrote the treatise and then did the recording. And in some cases, there are some famous cases where they say specifically, in this bar, don't do this terrible, tasteless thing of not playing hands together. And then lo and behold, and that's exactly what they do on their own recording, that piece.
I have to think, when I hear this, of a more modern occasion of this, which is Messiaen. Because he has very specific rhythm notation, no? Very detailed and very difficult actually to read and perform on the organ, I mean.
Mm-hmm.
And organ students today have to struggle a lot in getting it right, and spend a lot of time practicing these rhythms.
Yeah.
And then you listen to his recordings, and they're way off. It's just all an approximation.
Some
Yeah.
improvisation that he does.
I guess so, yeah. Or maybe he wrote it down and then didn't like it or something.
It's a really interesting phenomenon, specifically with these sort of modernist composers, starting even earlier with people like Prokofiev or Shostakovich, who were known both as players and as composers, especially these two, as kind of inspired by the industrialization and this kind of machine-like music and all of this imagery. When you listen to their own recordings, as musicians, they're still very much in the Romantic tradition. They speed up and slow down, and Prokofiev does all sorts of lovely rubato things in his own music and stuff. But if you then actually pay a lot of attention and compare them to other musicians from the same time, yes, there are less romantic than the others around the time. There are even in their playing stricter, closer to what the next generation of musicians, for example, brings. So the difference is smaller between them and their contemporaries, but for them it was, of course, it was also coming with the type of music that they were writing. But for them it was more of a striking difference than it is for us, because we're so much further away from them that in a way they all sound so much freer than we think of classical music today.
Yeah.
And I think Messiaen is, like Bartok, also falling in the same kind of category.
One more wine.
What's your favorite dish so far?
Hard to tell.
I would say for the kind of the more Sichuan taste, it's they actually don't have Sichuan peppers in none of these dishes, apart from this one.
I think this is not Sichuan, no? Kung Pao.
There is a bit, but it's not Sichuan. Yeah, so this one is the most, but this one will be
a blast
for sure. The more of
I'm trying some
more of that flavor.
Eggplant.
Yeah, the noodles, huh? Yes, super nice. I don't
I
know.
also like this a lot.
In there that gives this
I
kind
know.
of super
We should have gotten the cucumber
nice
salad.
freshness.
That's true.
Missed opportunity.
It's nice.
Yeah.
Are you also vegetarian?
So what happens when you compare what you're doing there to your, because you always also play Baroque music, right?
Yeah.
What happens there? Like you do this research, you do these
Bad
recordings.
Bad things.
Bad things.
I don't know. I mean, actually, that's something I've heard other of my colleagues, other cellists who do like a lot more research than me, like who did PhDs in Romantic performance practice and studying specific cellists from the Romantic era. Two of them, and they were telling me that it's difficult now. They are really critical towards their performance of earlier repertoires. They don't know anymore what to do. Yeah, like it sounds dishonest, or like we're all basically replicating some 20th century aesthetic
20th century
and
trends.
applying those things onto earlier repertoires and earlier sources to some extent, at least in regular gigs. Like maybe the thing with us is I don't play in that many different Baroque groups. Of course, I think I'm always flexible, so if I play with a group, I become a chamber musician and I play chamber music with the people who are around me, and that
in their
like,
style.
Yeah, I guess. I mean,
You don't start playing not together all of a
I think
sudden.
it's a good time for a little bit of context.
Oh, yeah?
Because I think we're missing an important ingredient here. Because there's this idea that historically speaking, there are a lot of reasons to think that that there was a lot more continuity before the 20th century,
Yeah.
before everything that happened in
Mhm.
the 20th century with the change of styles. So it's not necessarily so far-fetched to say that in the playing of some of the oldest people on record, that there are stylistic features that were present in earlier generations. So you could trace back to, Beethoven and Mozart, let's say.
Mhm.
Especially when the music itself, the sort of the texture, how the music is constructed, is similar.
Mhm.
So let's say you have a recording of Reinecke playing Beethoven, a piano roll recording, or playing Mozart, and he was known as specifically somebody who preserved the old traditions of playing,
Mhm.
who was the Mozart specialist, and he was very old-fashioned for the time.
Mhm.
He was born in the 1820s. Beethoven was still alive, actually, when Reinecke was born. Not that they met, but still. And so I think, if him playing Beethoven
It's closer to Beethoven.
is closer to Beethoven than an HIP player from today.
Yeah.
This I could say with, with good amount of certainty.
Yeah.
And then, of course, it becomes a very shaky ground. Which aspects are changed, which did not, we don't necessarily know. And
Yeah.
then you start to
But there are
look at
sources-
sources. You start to look at written sources, compare that to early recordings. That's very revealing.
Mhm.
Things like rubato and lots of features. Also, it's the same with vibrato there's a lot of room for sort of fantasizing in this way, using early recordings as kind of a illustration of what even earlier sources could be. You can listen to Marie Soldat playing Spohr concerto and look at Spohr's descriptions of how he's supposed to play that, and
she does a lot of the same things.
she does things that are just what he says, and he's quite specific. It makes you think, how far can we go with this kind of method? How far back can we go? Descriptions of rubato, as you very well know, are similar over the centuries.
Mhm.
It's not a 19th century invention.
Not at all.
No.
But I guess it's a little bit also like, so we're both you and I are trained in the 20th and 21st centuries, and then we go to foreign land of early recordings, the 19th century musicians, how they sounded. It's a really similar thing to even what I was talking about earlier today, like being an expat somewhere for some years and then coming back to your own country. There's a similar effect, I think. Like you hear those romantics and you feel like you understand a bit of their language, you get a glimpse of what, you're touched by them, so that means you understood something. And then you come back to musicians of your own time and you start seeing the patterns a little bit more. Like, okay, what's typical to us then? So that's when I think I can see some more similarities between, let's say, the early music movement, what that gave us, and what 20th, 21st century approaches to music are in other circles. In a way, there are things in common there that are not common to romantics, to the people who recorded in the very first years of the 20th century, when they were still not used to listening to CDs and to hear recordings of themselves and all of this before things started changing.
In
Yeah,
1904, they were still not used to listening to CDs.
Sorry,
Took
I
a
don't know why I
while.
said that. But basically, the idea is like, you start seeing more common things between today's styles that are still very different.
Do you think that the technology of recording changed the playing style?
Absolutely, no doubt about that.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people say that.
A lot of people say that.
Yeah, it's a current kind of theory that one of the things that affected the changes, in addition to cultural changes that came after the wars, and basically modernism and things like that, that the fact of hearing and being able to replicate one interpretation, the fact of trying to reach a certain amount of perfection when you can edit recording.
I mean, it changed the
all of
approach
these
to
things.
music on so many levels. I think, in fact, and I'm not the first one to say this, I believe it was Richard Taraskin, the invention of recording is the biggest change in music, in the history of music, in the entire history of music. Even more than the invention of writing music down. Because you basically still did the same thing. It was just an aid, you know, an easier way to remember something, to remind you of how it goes, but you still
know how it goes.
You still know how it goes.
Still an oral tradition in a way.
You still basically, you could not walk into a room and hear music and there wouldn't be a person playing music. Whereas today it's the other way around.
Yes.
You walk into a room, you hear music, you don't imagine a person playing music.
Yes, true.
If you want to hear music today, you don't go and play a four-hand arrangement of a Schumann symphony, or whatnot. Yeah, you go to a concert. I mean, this was not at all the reality for most of human history. So it's definitely a huge psychological change. Also, simply actually creating a kind of a globalized style of performance. Trains helped. I mean, Liszt traveled a lot, and people heard him. And
Globalization, you mean? Of
Mobility.
Yeah, you have a recording that's available everywhere in the world, and everybody can hear a great performer. When they're studying.
So when you look at the Italian language, it's been very diverse and ununified. And one of the things where linguists say it becomes one language is Dante, like Luther for German. But still, way into the 20th century, you can't really speak of Italian. But people...
21st century, you said?
20th.
20th, okay. Yeah.
But apparently it's been newspapers and especially TV that has
Obviously
led to the Italian language. And it seems to me like that might be happening also, or might have happened with recordings. But also, I mean, really these things like all of a sudden assuming that being together is the best thing. I'm wondering if maybe this on a recording sounds maybe not as convincing as it might in a live performance, or where you just don't notice it maybe.
In fact, several musicians who recorded for the first time heard themselves for the first time, played back.
Pianists.
Pianists,
We're talking about,
specifically pianists, were surprised by this.
By how their hands were not put together.
Many stories that also, for example, Arthur Rubinstein was actually told not to do that, not to play hands untogether, as he was getting famous by studio engineers.
And obviously, exactly what I was gonna say is the technical aspects of like just editing. If you have a quartet and they're constantly not playing together, how are you gonna edit together all the parts?
That comes in later.
If it's every time. It comes in later, of course.
With I guess
the styles had already changed
by that point. It's actually in Germany where they started with magnetic tape. It was a secret technology for a while, and then the Americans stole it basically. During the war, like after the war.
I didn't
it's
know
an
that.
interesting history.
Can you actually hand me my computer? So I think
Which one's yours?
The one with the little sticker.
Yeah, that's me. Thanks. I'll just check my notes.
Do you think Irene will be hungry?
No, I told her that we had lunch. Not lunch, dinner. Sorry.
There's a bit left of everything.
I'm still hungry. I would love to. Have more.
Oh yeah, something I wanted to know is, when you study these things, do you Do you make conclusions on the mindset and the culture on a like more abstract level? Do you recognize people thinking differently, not in terms of music, but in general? Is it something that comes up?
I
Or
guess
does it
it's,
not matter?
for me, it's something I'm curious about, but I don't feel like I have a really clear grasp on yet.
Yeah.
But it's definitely something I was like interested in getting more of. So reading a lot of 19th century literature, a lot of recollections of people. So, and
Yeah, also things like memories of people
Yeah.
making recordings and things like that.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting. The problem with connecting this to actual performance or even imitations is that it's just there's no map for how to connect psychological or cultural aspects with what happens in
In the
performance.
music.
Yeah, so without kind of a roadmap for that, it's anyone's guess.
Anyone's guess.
Yeah, so it's interesting, but it's honestly, when it comes to performance, it's kind of just trivia,
Yeah,
fun stuff to know.
yeah.
And whatever you feel, how is that gonna affect how you play? I don't know. Nobody knows.
Yeah.
Might as well be thinking of Chinese food.
Yeah.
Maybe that's how I'll get the best rubato I can manage.
I see.
I mean, to be perfectly honest, I just if there is, maybe I just haven't encountered
I'm thinking of like Mahler conducting and things being not together, either very well rehearsed or maybe even just being a little bit messy. This is something that speaks of a less rigid mindset in general, for example.
That's
It's difficult, huh?
Yeah, what kind of rigidity are we talking about here, and what kind of messiness? I think the terms that we use to describe these things are very much of today.
I think
They
it's like
didn't exist in the language back then, so it's a linguistic problem.
I
to
think they
start
didn't
with.
know of today's cleanliness to start with. So
Yeah.
even if
Plus
you have a
that.
very strict person, they will want people to be very together. But what did together mean for them is just like, yeah.
I think it's actually a big problem with this, because we are kind of trained as musicians to believe that imagination is such a big part of our profession, and we make these very naive assumptions. We look at a picture of, let's say, Mahler or somebody else, and they look very tidy and very, they have all the way their clothes is arranged, and just their facial expressions and everything looks kind of posed and stiff, and we don't even think about, well, it was daguerreotype, it took a while to produce this portrait, they didn't look comfortable, and then we think, oh, it must be, they must be very specific in their notation and blah-di-da-di-da, or all these kinds of conclusions we derive from their letters and whatnot. And yeah, just simply listening to one, any early recording destroys all of these assumptions.
Yeah.
Just it's different. You have
Yeah.
no idea. You can't just look at a picture or read a book and read letters and draw conclusions about how music is to be played. That's just...
Which brings me to
No-go.
something I wanted to get back to, which was notation and describing music in comparison to notating and describing other things. Like we talked about paintings, but even something like poetry, when you describe a poem and you say what's happening in the poem without quoting it or rewriting it, how close can you get somebody to write that poem in instructions? And it's the same. You brought that up with a painting.
Yeah.
And you take a painting by Rembrandt, even a very simple one, and you describe it in as much detail as you want, and somebody has to do that painting from these descriptions.
Yeah.
And what do you get?
As many paintings as there are people trying to
Firstly,
reproduce.
that, and probably never the one that was the original.
Yeah.
Or probably not even stylistically
Well, the problem
recognizable.
The problem with music
Well-
is that there isn't that thing of an original.
Well, there was. I mean, it's the performance, no?
Right.
Well, yes, but even the composer's own performance is not an original. How is it an original? For example, it can be played by the composer who doesn't think he's the best at playing his own music.
Yes.
That happens very often. Or they
Okay.
play it one time and it's like this, the other time it's like that.
Okay, but I
I
mean,
think it used to happen
it's
less often than it does today, but okay, Haydn was one historical example of that.
But
You
yeah, I
mean
mean,
wow.
let's assume that we're trying to reconstruct for whatever purposes something
Right.
here.
Okay.
So let's say we reconstruct one of the performance of the Johannes Passion under Bach,
Okay.
and we assume we have somebody who wrote a 500-page book about the performance of 2 hours or
Yeah.
something,
Is it gonna sound like Mengelberg or is it gonna sound
and then
like Paul
we go
McCreesh?
we go from this yeah, exactly, and then we go from this book and reconstruct the performance, and it's probably going to be very different, no?
Yeah.
Well, we're gonna read the instructions based on our current aesthetics. So if many people are doing that, trying to reproduce, and they're all coming from a similar aesthetics, maybe they will actually come to similar conclusions, especially if they can hear each other's versions, which is what is happening nowadays with the early music.
Exactly, yeah.
So you hear somebody's version of Johannes Passion and you're like, oh no, I don't think they should do this. One thing, but overall it's still kind of the same. I mean,
Definitely not one per part.
yeah.
Yeah.
On a
Or
like
definitely-
detail level, it can be
Or
different,
definitely
but
one per part.
still.
I mean, we can't even
overall-
agree on these things conclusively. You're talking about how the rhythms are going to be played? Or
Exactly.
forget about it.
Yeah.
The other thing is there are things that we're simply not aware of. I
Mhm.
mean, who thinks about, exactly how the rhythm is played? We often talk about, just the way we play. I mean, we have to survive through the Johannes Passion. That's
Yeah.
a good example. We're not
Mm.
going to be going bar and figuring out how every rhythm is, a microsecond, how it's played. So just even knowing that this is something that could be different, just being aware of on which levels differences exist. And I'm sure there's tons of things that we're if we could now resurrect Paolo Gruppa and have him here with us discuss his performance, he would probably have a completely different set of criteria and details and ideas about what he was doing and what was important to him than we do. And his inverting rhythms and all that stuff,
It's not even inverting. It's
probably
like,
or whatever
it's
he did.
even rhythms. So he plays them
Okay, sure.
unevenly in the
yeah,
wrong way.
he may have not even noticed that.
He's just stressing the top notes of each interval.
Yeah, or maybe he was thinking of Chinese food.
But all this whole historical perspective, to maybe change the subject a little bit, was not something that you started out with when you were becoming musicians, right? And I guess it's funny how people get exposed to this and react very differently, no?
Yeah.
Like you got interested and engaged with it and now are researching into it, and other people get exposed and completely ignore it, right?
I guess so.
I mean, in
Yeah.
Amsterdam maybe it's a little bit of a special case because I feel like the whole thing is a little bit more integrated in school,
Yeah.
but in other places I think there are still people completely ignoring a historical perspective, which I'm not going to judge. I'm just going to ask you why it was that you got engaged with it and how that came about. One of you has to start.
Okay, I can start. I have it in my mind right now. So it started with actually it's really funny. If you want details, do you want a lot of details or a little bit of details? Not
Maybe just tell me how you got into music and then historical performance in general.
Music.
Into music.
Well, that's a lot of details.
Well, it depends on you.
Okay. So I think I heard some Violinist when I was a child, and then my parents are like, "What do you want for your 6th birthday?" I said a violin, and then they were like, "Oh, wait a second, you want a violin, but that comes with lessons and practicing and hard work, and it's very boring." And I said, "Yes, that's what I want." So then on my 6th,
As a 6-year-old.
yeah,
Then she tried the
5.
violin.
I was 5. I was about.
Then
to
she
turn
tried the
6.
violin and said, "Oh, I meant double bass, actually."
Yeah, that was about that. So on my 6th birthday, the day of it, I had my first violin lesson. And then I practiced and I did all the boring stuff. And then I saw a double bass and I was like, oh, actually, I'm totally going to be a double bass player. But I'm very small, so first I'm going to play the cello.
She never grew up.
Then I'll move on when I'm tall enough to the double bass.
So that's why you're playing the double bass now.
No,
Not.
because what happened is that, so then I went to this elementary school which had a music program. Played violin at first, and then switched to cello, and I knew that in the cello class you get to play double bass in the string ensemble at some point. But I just love the cello. I really love the cello so much, so I completely forgot about the double bass. So yeah.
And where was that?
Where? That was in Montreal. Yeah,
where you were born and raised.
And this particular school was called Le Plateau.
Le Plateau.
Yeah. So yeah, and then later on, I was in the conservatory many years later, playing the cello still, and I actually had an injury, which meant I kind of had to stop playing for a lot of time, and barely played at all for like 8 months. But there were a few things, so the school was waiting for me to get better so I can start again playing, but they still wanted me to do some of the classes. I could skip orchestra. I could attend other people's private cello lessons instead of having my own. But I think at some point they were like, oh, maybe you can do some light chamber music. Like, what about if you attend the Baroque chamber music classes? It's lighter, right? Just going to play some bass lines. I'm like, okay, sure. Sounds good to me. So I did that. And the teacher was really amazing. He was this Baroque violinist in Montreal called Olivier Brault, who has huge knowledge. And at that point he was doing I think he was in the middle of doing his PhD about French music, and we played Couperin, actually with Daniel Lantier, who also turned into a Baroque oboist later on. So we were playing on modern instruments.
What was the composer?
Couperin.
I love that.
Yeah.
Canadian. Yeah.
So yeah. So we were taught really well by this teacher who was so enthusiastic and telling us about a lot of different aspects of the music, about sources, about temperaments, and we had even like a lot of private meetings after school where he would lecture us on temperaments for hours.
That was the forbidden
Baroque
subject.
dance and all of actually he was told not to talk about intonation by the school because he was going to destroy all the good modern violinists' intonation.
Really?
By telling them about like lower major thirds.
I have the same problem in Utrecht now, but maybe I shouldn't be talking about it.
No.
Who knows who's going to be listening to this?
Yeah.
It's incredible. But so one of the things that got you engaged with it was the person who taught
The
it.
person, but also just the intelligence, and it made so much sense to me, you know? It's like between not knowing anything about the music you're playing and knowing a lot of things about it, and for it to like teach you how to be more expressive with it and how to make sense of it. And then suddenly, like, I felt like I had a purpose with the music. You know, I'm engaging with the material in a more substantial way rather than just kind of replicating some other recordings of a piece or like going with with the canons. And then I had a lot of problems. I had to change teachers because at that time my teacher was teaching me Bach, and he was like, "Yeah, Bach, it's Baroque. You know, Baroque architecture. It's all very symmetrical with all these arches. So you have to use like." All of the bowings, you remove all the ones that are in the score by Anna Magdalena, and instead do always even bowings. You know, slur by 4, and if you slur by 4 in one direction, you slur by 4 in the other direction,
No way.
and all of these.
That's
kinds
exactly
of
what I was
and
saying
I was
earlier.
like, oh well,
when, looking at pictures and assuming things.
Yeah.
Here's
Like-
a more sophisticated example of that.
Yeah.
like okay, what about architecture? Baroque architecture is anything but symmetrical, and also let's talk about the music. Yeah. So
I mean, it's symmetrical in some ways and not symmetrical
but
in
it's
others.
it felt like such nonsense to me. So that was a bit of a. But it took me many more years after that, before I started doing early music myself. Because actually in Montreal it's difficult to study it. There's almost no schooling for early music. So yeah, I had to come to Europe to kind of immerse myself more. That's what happened.
And then you finished your degree in modern cello in Montreal?
Yeah, so I did my whole conservatory in modern cello. So I had like a master's equivalent. Then I had 2 years out of school, and during the second year, I think at some point I realized, okay, I'm getting frustrated. I keep thinking, oh, all my lucky friends in Europe who play with gut strings, why don't I just do that myself instead of being
So you had
unhappy?
friends who moved.
Yeah, a
to
few
Europe.
friends, and I would see news from them on Facebook or something, and thinking, okay, well, I mean, I always wanted to do this, so let's not wait. There's no reason to wait, and let's do it. And let's do it now, and let's do it here. So I immediately wrote to this Baroque cellist in Montreal who I had heard so much about. Actually, my best friend was a Baroque cellist, actually. I forgot to say. That was an important part, because we always read duets in our free time. That was like our hangout hobby.
Occupation, yeah.
Yeah. He would play with gut strings, and I would play with metal strings. We're just playing a lot of...
Wasn't he
Baroque-
playing gamba?
Also gamba, but also Baroque cello. And he studied with Susie Napper, and he was always telling me about her, how inspiring she was, and I also heard her recording, so I loved her. So I wrote to her. I was like, I'm a modern cellist. I don't have a Baroque cello, but I really want to play Baroque cello. Can I still audition for you? She said yes. So I auditioned with my modern cello, and then I got into the school, and I got a cello to put gut strings on.
And it went downhill from there.
Yes. Yeah. And then I did an exchange program from that university to go to Europe, because it was also a dream I never did before. So I decided, okay, let's do that. And I went to Europe, and I thought for maybe 1 year, maybe 2, and then I just stayed in Europe, and I'm still in Europe.
So when you came to Amsterdam, that was in an exchange program.
The first year, yeah, that was basically my way of financing it and get started with it, basically.
That's when we met.
That's when we met.
2014.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you didn't plan necessarily on staying.
I was very open-minded. I was like, maybe I'll stay, maybe I won't stay.
I
I'm
see.
not thinking ahead
Yeah,
too
yeah.
much.
I see.
Yeah.
But now, do you ever think about going back?
Well, not in the near future, I think, because there are still things to explore here. Music life is very interesting, very
Is it?
stimulating. I think so.
For you, yeah.
For me, yes, because Montreal is very nice, but it's quite, in a way, just because it's North American, everything's far away from each other, so you have to deal with one city at a time, in a way. Here, things communicate.
travel
much,
a lot.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
travel more, even if you travel more, other people travel more to you, and so I mean there are interconnections between cultures and people from different places, and it means everything's a bit more alive in a way in Montreal. So, and also the early music scene is quite small. So, for example, if we were to both move to Montreal with Tioma, there are very few forte pianos there. There are some, but it's
I see.
substantially less.
What am I gonna do?
Yeah, a lot of things would be to build from scratch, which is possible there, which is also a nice aspect. And that's also what brought, I think, people like Susie and Bruce there. It's like an empty space where all the dreams can come true, and you can start things from scratch, and you can
Well,
make
we're
things
doing
happen.
this here with romantic performance practice in a way.
That's true, yeah. But it's true that in the end, you end up just liking other people to play with in some way.
Infrastructure.
Infrastructure and a scene. Enough about me.
I just opened another bottle of wine, which is a 2019 natural wine, purely Silvaner, which is a German varietal from Rheinhessen, from the
Nirvana, you said it's called?
you wish winery Wittmann, which is one of the very early biodynamic wineries in Germany. And they make biodynamic, but sort of, how do you say, conventional wine.
Oh, okay.
But they have this natural
everybody happy.
line. Well, it doesn't make people happy who don't like biodynamic wine. And there are some, actually, who don't like it. But yeah, I think this is also
this
very
is
good
water,
one.
right?
Well, in the other bottle, that's water, yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
great.
I'm not
thank
going
you.
to talk about the water. We did that.
I was hoping you would do that. Fill this bottle with water.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Who wants water? Cheers.
Cheers again.
Prost.
Prost.
I'm saying it with the Dutch accent.
Well done. Toast.
Quebecois Dutch accent.
Ah.
Yeah, this is very nice.
Oh, I love it.
Really, really love it.
I had another bottle of this one and I completely forgot. Now I remember what it's like.
Okay.
Yeah. I had something very similar. It brings memories. This wine.
It's funny,
It
huh?
brings those things I don't experience very often.
Mm.
Memories. Could I have your glass?
Just one what? Thank you very much. All these nice sounds you're recording.
Well, we see, yeah. Does it get it?
Of course.
Of course.
Nice.
I might actually sample some of them.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
gonna ask if you're gonna make some nice music out of it.
Yeah.
You should send it to us if you do.
Yeah. I will.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Nice.
So let's talk about Tyoma.
Ta-da.
I introduced you as Artem Bellagorov,
Yeah, now I have to explain
Which-
what
which-
the hell you're calling me.
which happens a lot, but I call you Tyoma because, yeah, you tell me why that is.
Okay, so my name is Russian, and in Russian, my first name sounds like this, Artem, and Tyoma is a diminutive, sort of short, cute version of Artem.
Cute. Yeah, it's very cute.
I think it's cute. Yeah,
Mm.
I don't really like Artem, but Tyoma I think is nice.
It suits you.
Yeah. Well, that's all about my name.
why do you have a Russian name?
I don't know. Ask my parents.
You were not born in Russia.
I was not.
As I
even, I
learned.
never even lived in Russia.
You never
yeah.
lived there.
So what's
And yeah,
But you
actually,
speak
none
Russian,
of my
but you
parents were
speak
born
Russian.
yeah, that's my first language. Yeah, so
Yeah.
I was basically born into a Russian family,
Living in?
living in Riga in Latvia.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they both kind of ended up there. Well, like with a lot of people in Soviet Union, people moved to places, ended up in strange places for strange reasons. Yeah, so I ended up being born in Riga, only spending there about 4 years, 3.5 years. Then
until the Soviet Union went.
then Soviet Union fell apart. So I was actually born in Soviet Union. I mean, I was born in a country that doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, me too.
Ah.
Yeah, that's true. Well, not in Soviet
GDR.
Union, but
Yeah.
GDR, exactly.
It doesn't exist anymore, yeah.
Yeah. So we're kind of historical, you and I, in a way.
Artifacts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like it's so long ago.
Well, now I'm starting to feel it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. By now, like.
Just that whole time, it's a historical time.
Yeah,
I
also
don't
I-
feel like we're really related to it.
Yeah, and also now I know so many people who are much younger than me, who actually GDR is like what was Nazi Germany to me. It's a historical fact.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah. Just
nothing
a bit
more
of
than
history.
that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Bit
it's
of
funny
history,
how time becomes history.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, anyways, so then we moved to Odessa. That's where I started doing music. We had an upright piano in the house,
Mm-hmm.
some LPs. So I actually taught myself
You taught yourself.
how to read music.
Really?
Yeah,
At what age was it?
yeah, I was about 8.
You can do that actually
something
without
like
the
that.
internet. How do you teach yourself to read?
Yeah, that's a good question. Somebody gave me a little book, which actually had like a little synthesizer attached to it, like a really tiny thing with batteries, with those
Yeah.
like flat batteries.
Yeah.
This crazy thing, and it basically explained how to read music. So I learned from that, and then I was like, okay, I want Beethoven sonatas.
Straight from there.
Straight from there. Yeah, that's what I did. Apparently, that's what my mom tells me. I don't know.
But
How
you
old
had.
were you? Oh, sorry.
I don't know, 8, 9, something like that. Then I dragged her into, music school. I want to do music. Because I guess my alternatives were tennis or karate. So I don't know. I think music was actually a pretty good choice.
But did your parents have any relation to music?
Not really, no. Definitely not my dad, who was a scientist, was not really into music. My mom liked music, but yeah. I mean, I think she took some lessons for a couple of years, something like this, when she was young, but nothing more than that. Then
Like me.
yeah. My sister also, who was much older and was living in a different country in the US, where I eventually ended up.
Mm.
She also took some piano lessons and hated it, I think. But it was basically thanks to her that we had a piano that was bought for her. So I started fooling around with the piano and composing and improvising.
Did you go through a very strict Russian piano school?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think so. No, not really. You know, I went to like a small local. We had lots of small music schools. Every district, like in Paris, you have a conservatory in every district. We had a small school, so it was pretty easygoing. Then I went to this sort of special music school for gifted. Yeah, whatever the Soviet title of it was. I think the name of it precedes Soviet Union. Oh, here's our friend. Anyways, yeah, so I spent 14 years or so in Odessa in Ukraine, studying music, playing piano and flute, and doing composition. Then when I was 18, or 19, I moved to the US.
At what, 19?
Yeah, 19, I think.
Huh.
18, 19, something like that, maybe. Still, 19. Yeah, did went to the conservatory in Boston, did my bachelor's in modern piano. While I was there, I got interested in historical pianos.
Do you remember how that came about?
I think there were two things. There was a collection of instruments in a town in Massachusetts, sort of not far from Boston. Really an amazing collection of pianos that I went to. So that was my first experience with historical instruments. And then there was also Bob Levin, whose lectures I audited in Harvard, and he was just a very inspiring presence. I've kept in touch with him and took some lessons, went to master classes over the following years. But yeah, so I got interested in historical instruments, specifically in fortepianos, and I always loved Viennese classical repertoire, so that made a lot of sense to me to explore the instruments of the time. Although I think back then I was I probably wouldn't have believed if somebody told me that I would be playing a harpsichord or clavichord. I didn't even know what a clavichord was.
Yeah.
So I think I was probably pretty limited in my knowledge and also views. But anyways, speaking of historical recordings, that's something that was already present
at that time
and even earlier. That's actually, even back in Odessa, I got to know the recordings of Rachmaninoff.
Yeah.
Playing his own music and playing other things. And I just loved that. I never really thought of it as a kind of a separate category. I didn't know anything, the idea of historical performance practice didn't really exist. And in Ukraine probably still doesn't exist at all, actually. I mean, only if you know something from abroad. There's no school for that or nothing like that. Yeah, so it was just music. I didn't even think so much of it as a historical artifact, and I just loved the playing, and especially the recordings with Chrysler. And while I was at the New England Conservatory in Boston, playing with, I had a duel with a violinist for some time, and I was torturing her, actually asking her to do things that Chrysler would be doing, slides and some of these features, just because I like that stuff.
Not to do it the way they did. I mean, not for the purpose of historical reconstruction, just because you...
I was just not thinking in those categories.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Which is,
Interesting.
Schubert sonata, this recording with Rachmaninoff sounds great. That's how it should go, because it just makes so much sense, and I love it, and it's just more musical this way, basically. That was my understanding of it back then. So this idea of imitation, even though I totally didn't think of it this way, was at the back of my mind somehow present. Yeah. And I was kind of actually starting to do these things on my own, and on a rare occasion annoying my teacher when something comes out. without me even thinking about it, being aware.
There's a nice thing about that on your website, I think, about you not playing chords together.
Yeah,
And
that
somebody
actually,
pointed it out to you.
that was a friend of mine.
Yeah.
Yeah, who told me that after. I mean, we were quite close, so she knew my playing probably better than I did at that point. And at some point she told me, you never play hands together. Like, you never play chords together. What's wrong with you? It's like, oh, I didn't know that. Then I tried very hard to do them together. Yeah, that happened. But again, without any historical awareness. I'm actually, to be honest, not sure if that had anything to do with historical recordings. I was just a sloppy pianist. I think it's probably likelier. Yeah. Then while I was in the US, for the whole time, I basically was waiting first for my green card, then for my passport, so I can get out of there. And I
For
literally
your American passport.
for my American passport.
So you applied for citizenship.
I did. Yeah.
So wait, do you have a Russian passport?
No, I have a Ukrainian passport.
Okay.
Yeah, because that's.
And you don't have a
that's where I
Latvian
grew up.
passport?
No.
Unfortunately.
Even though I was born there, my mom was born there, I still can't get it. It's
You
a funny.
can't even get it.
No,
Huh.
it's a funny thing. I would have
Yeah.
to have my grandparents born there,
Oh no.
and I think also having Latvian name would help. Last name, yeah. Well, fine. I
Yeah.
don't need it.
Anyway, you got an American passport.
I got an American passport, and I literally left the country the same day.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah. He was late for school because he
I
was
was late for
waiting for the
school.
passport. He can't leave the country before it is issued, and he has it,
Of
right?
course, yeah.
Yeah.
So just waiting.
I got on the
October,
plane.
whatever, and then just left that day.
And I arrived here, and first thing I did, I went to Teresa de Judas class on Continuo.
Apologizing for being late.
I don't
No,
think I did
no,
that.
no,
I
no,
didn't,
no,
didn't go
just
that
kidding.
far.
Yeah.
No, everybody knew that I would be arriving late. Also, nobody cared, I think. But
Apart from Teresa de Jude.
well, I don't know what she thought. She has all sorts of stories that I'm not aware of. I don't know if it's my memory or her fantasy. It's probably somewhere in between. Yeah, well, that was that. And yeah, basically I just wanted to move to Europe. That was my main
What did you think would happen when you moved to Europe?
great things.
Great things. Yeah.
Of course.
Did they
Have
happen?
they happened yet?
Yeah, I mean they're happening all the time. They were also happening in other places.
But I mean,
Before
you had
Europe?
been in Europe before, so you knew a little bit what you were getting into.
Yes, a little bit, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I wanted to study early music. Yeah, specifically forte piano. But I also didn't. Yeah, it wasn't really so much of a concern. Exactly what I'm studying on, with whom, for example.
Mhm.
I met Richard Igar, who was my forte piano teacher, for the first time
Here.
when I got here. Yeah,
Did you apply and audition online? Or just with recordings?
I
or how
did actually. Yeah, let's get nerdy here. I recorded a tape on a clavichord. That was my first time playing on the clavichord, and it was a historical clavichord.
Really?
You would be interested in knowing that. So it was a Chickering
Oh.
instrument. So it was an instrument designed, I guess, by Dolmach and the Chickering Piano
No
Factory
way.
together. That belongs to Peter Sykes,
Mhm.
who's a well-known harpsichord, organ, clavichord, pedal piano player, based in the East Coast. Teaches at Juilliard now. Yeah, so he's incredibly generous. So I asked him if I could use his instrument to make a tape, and I went and I played a D minor Bach French suite on this clavichord for the first time.
On a chicken.
It was on this Chickering clavichord. That was my first time playing the clavichord. Thankfully, it's quite an easy instrument to
play
on.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah, kind of a springy
Mm-hmm.
thing, quite forgiving. So I did that, and I think I did some Chopin on a Pleyel in that
Mhm.
collection
Also, yeah.
that through which I actually got
Yeah,
to know
in
historical
Boston.
instruments.
Yeah.
Then I had to do a live audition as well. I remember that
And
Teresa was on the jury. I was playing some Chopin and then some preludes.
And that was when you got here.
No, I think
No,
that was
you-
before.
You-
Because I
so you
came
came
a
here
couple of I
before.
came a couple of times.
I see,
Yeah,
yeah.
kind of looking for schools, meeting
Mm.
people, and that kind of stuff. Prospective teachers, shopping for schools and teachers.
Yeah.
Mostly, I was interested in pretty towns.
Yeah, me
basically.
too. That's
Well, you
exactly the
found
same.
one, I
Yeah.
would say.
That's why
I
we
think I
ended
found
up
one.
here. I was like, I'd like to live in a beautiful place.
Yeah, it was Basel, Hague, Amsterdam,
Cologne.
I didn't.
It
Oh
was
no, actually,
no,
I went.
Cologne I didn't.
I went to I went to Cologne. No.
No. Not
I also
pretty.
went to Cologne and I had a lesson there. I was also shopping for schools. at
I
some
didn't even
point,
have a
yeah.
lesson. Yeah.
No,
I
Maria
didn't even go that
Kriegel.
far.
Let's not talk about Cologne.
Yeah. But yeah, between those three choices, Basel, Den Haag, and Amsterdam, I was like,
Ah,
oh, Amsterdam's
We had the
extremely
same-
beautiful.
Yeah.
Let's go there.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also liked, I met Mano kind of by chance, I think. I thought, I like this guy. He seems
Good
He seems
vibes.
chill.
Yeah, he is.
What about Teresa in your audition? You were saying.
Oh yeah, in the audition, yeah,
We're unpacking
played-
some anecdotes here, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just one.
Yeah,
Just
let's
one.
do it.
One small.
Well, we'll have to have at least one with Teresa.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah, so I was playing some Chopin preludes, and then she started asking for specific numbers. Can you play this one? Do you know this piece?
In the audition.
In the audition. And I'll be like, no, I don't know this one. I can play a similar one. Play this one. I was like, okay.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that was that.
And
So
then
I
you
ended
moved
up in
here.
Amsterdam.
Yeah.
I did a degree in early keyboards. Ended up being fortepiano and clavichord.
But you said that you weren't specifically like auditioning for a teacher, specific one, and also like whatever you would study didn't really matter. But what made you
Well-
come to Europe?
Oh, it wasn't quite as bad as that. I did want to study fortepiano. That was the basic idea. But when I heard that you can do this program here with clavichord, and what basically you know the early keyboards in Amsterdam. This program, you come up with your own mixture of two main subjects, two majors, two minors, kind of thing. I don't know what they're doing now. I think they were kind of in the beginning of it, still figuring out. I think there was one or two students before me in the program.
There were,
So
yeah.
there was still figuring out exactly how it works. Well, I mostly just wanted to be in Europe, also because there's a lot more early music, and that's what I wanted to pursue in terms of my studies. I was out of school right before for a number of years, so I was doing my concerts, gigs, playing some-
Career.
for lack of a better term. Mostly on modern piano and some historical instruments in the US that I could get my hands on. Also, I did some things in Europe, on modern piano in those years. But I wanted to basically relocate. Well, I think the original plan was to be in between two places eventually, which I guess I did to some degree.
For a while.
I would go back to the US for a couple of weeks or a month, 2-3 times a year, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But as Octavie, I was quite open to whatever happens.
Yeah.
I knew that with a change like this, you can't really I
Wow.
already had the experience of moving to a different country. I knew how much you should realistically expect or not expect, more like. So I wasn't too strict with my dreams or ideas for the future, so I was open to whatever's going to happen, which is exactly what happened. Things I didn't expect would. Like I wasn't
Like
planning on
Romantic
playing
Lab.
harpsichord. Romantic Lab was surprising in a different way, because first things that I didn't expect would happened, like playing continue playing, earlier repertoire that I was ever really interested in. Things like that, and then kind of going back to my previous interests with romantic performance practice and developing that. Yeah, I think that's basically only thanks to Octavie, because she was also interested in it, and we kind of inspired each other or pushed each other towards doing more of that. Yeah. And then meeting other people who do this.
Networking.
Yeah, that was nice
Kind of
actually.
thing.
Doing the Romantic Lab pushed us more into this field, basically, in a way, because we met other people.
And you started also doing interviews with other people, and
That's
the
actually a
blog
really
and-
it's
That's
a
a very
really
late-
late development of this year, and actually that development came out of the developments that came from Romantic Lab. So we did Romantic Lab. We presented that, for example, in Oxford.
You did?
We met a lot of people
oh really, I didn't know
there, and approximately around the same time as we started Romantic Lab, a bit before, I did also this festival around Romberg.
that.
And through that, I met Job Terhar and Kate Bennett Wadsworth, and they became also kind of close friends. And so we kind of became part of a whole circle of people. Then through La Nouvelle Athènes, we also met other people who do imitation of early recordings, and that got us kind of communicating with these people and learning more from them, and then attending online conferences this last year with the Corona crisis. What do you want? You want
I think
more?
she has some wine.
She has wine.
Ah, she was.
Don't worry, that's the first thing we
It's very nice.
Yeah, so that just developed really quickly, I think, just from having done some research of your own, and then
Yeah.
it being known by other people who do similar type of work, and exchanging with those people, learning from each other, and discussing. Yeah. So
And right now you're working on something not romantic, something earlier,
that's true.
Right this moment.
right at this moment.
Yeah, well, we quite recently we did another imitation project actually with
Really?
with a violinist. That's an interesting one.
Yeah.
So the violinist is Johannes Gebauer, based in Berlin, and he's a postdoc at Bern University, and he's done his PhD, which is actually going to come out as a book about Joachim. And he was one of the first people to do this kind of work, together with a pianist, Sebastian Bausch, who's also at Bern.
And another pianist, Camilla Kenken.
Oh yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, but I know the one of Joachim Romance that they did an imitation of.
That's right.
Yeah, so we did this. So he's part of this sort of group of performers, researchers interested in imitation specifically, and early recordings and all that. And there's 6 of us, and we're sort of based in Paris, I guess, is our at La Nouvelle Athènes, but of course over the past year and a half it was almost everything was online. And that's exactly what we did. We did an imitation of 2 movements of Beethoven trios, with the 2 of us, Octavie and I, playing in Amsterdam at the same time through the internet, with Johannes playing the violin in Berlin.
Imitating it. This
Imitating.
Yeah, but
Two
we were
different
actually
recordings,
rehearsing online. That's the
Yeah.
funny thing.
And how
We
did
never
it-
met in the same room so far
Wow,
with
yeah.
that imitation.
How did that go?
Super well. I
Yeah?
mean,
It went
it's
quite well,
amazing that
yeah.
there's no delay if you use the software is Jam Kazam. Yeah.
Ah, okay.
And you use proper internet and Ethernet cable connection.
Yeah.
And it can be made to happen. Yeah, you hear each other in real time. So yeah, we did that. It's really nice.
I didn't know that.
That was a couple of
Yeah.
weeks ago.
This is going to go on the Romantic Lab website.
Yeah, and I
Yeah,
think we'll do
probably, yeah.
more of that in person when it's possible.
Yeah.
And polish
I think
what we've done already.
there will be a presentation about it, and probably some sort of a documentary kind
Yeah.
of thing. Yeah, we'll see exactly
Yeah.
which shape it will take in the end.
Yeah, but you're right that more recently we've been doing other repertoires, like Gallant repertoire, both with postscript and also together as a duo.
Yeah,
with like today we were rehearsing for this recital we'll have next week. I'm playing on my small baroque cello, and I tuned it to fifth higher, and
Wow.
I'm playing galant music from Germany with a EADG tuning. If you start from the highest string.
From the highest, yeah.
Yeah,
I-
I guess you're supposed to start from bottom, so G D A.
I always
E.
do, but
Yeah, G D A E.
Okay, anyway.
And with his
That's where you were born, right? GDA.
Good?
Yep.
Should we call it a day? Should we call it a
Yeah.
day? Yeah, Lorenz is got enough.
Yeah, it's enough material.
He's running out
Thank
of
you very
wine.
much,
That's
guys.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I think it was
Come again.
brilliant. Yeah.